going to pull up the chat. I'm going to pull up, Twitter in case someone says something. They haven't been much lately. Oh, yeah, it looks good. I think, see? You like the graphic?
Oh, fancy.
Yeah.
I do like that box around it. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I'm going to put more it'll look better and better. Okay. How's your voices? Everyone else? Anyone else lose their voice all week?
Mine's come back. I think.
Mine's not quite there. It's close.
A lot of cold water, a lot of cough drops.
Yeah.
Herbal tea helped a little bit.
All right, here we go. I'm going to hit record. Still nervous. Welcome, everyone, to Flyover Footy on the Big 550 KTRS. If you're listening to us for the first time, this is the first time we're airing an hour and a half before the start of the game on Saturday. So if you're listening to us for the first time, we are a St. Louis soccer podcast, and we get nerdy. We talk about the basics, too. We recap, we preview, we talk about soccer news in the city. And so welcome. We're here to have a good time and to educate you. And so I hope you enjoy it and look us up in the future if you do feel like doing that. I'm going to do something. I'm going to correct something I did wrong as a rookie mistake I did last week. I didn't introduce anybody. So I want to say, first of all, that I am Phil Grooms. I've been doing this for a few years under the moniker of STL Soccer Report at times, and it's been Flyover Footy since my friends joined me here. And we'll skip straight to them. Matt Baker is the one that you're hearing on a lot of these commercials and features. Matt, right. You've been all over the place on every podcast and radio show I can think of. Matt, how's it going, man? And welcome to the radio.
It's going great. I'm just lucky to be able to talk about what I'm passionate about to anybody that's going to listen. I don't feel myself doing anything special. It's just I love to be a student of the game. I love to absorb and learn as much as possible, especially related to St. Louis. It's been one of the most unique things in the world to be able to follow the build of an expansion side and what that means for St. Louis, and helping everybody to get up to speed on MLS and all the unique things in that league. And now it's all here. So there's nothing better than to be able to recap a game and look ahead. So I'm excited to keep this going.
Me too. This is my favorite thing, is just to talk about soccer, and we're just so lucky to have this opportunity. And next up, a man who talks about soccer during the game. Santiago Beltran does the Spanish language broadcast for the radio. Santiago, tell everybody about yourself. And by the way, he's joining us in a car on the way to Kansas City today. This is how dedicated this man is.
Yeah. So, joining from a remote location, but I'm here. But no, excited to be here talking to you guys, and had a blast the first game, called 3 goals. So what else can you ask for, and a win for St. Louis City SC.
It doesn't get any better than that.
That's right. We're keeping you busy during the games, having to call goals and get creative with it. 6 goals in 2 games, Santi. What do you think, man?
Well, it's a great start. Obviously 3 goals each game. And you can see that exciting style that the team is implementing or has implemented, quick transitions. So it's basically everything we thought was going to happen and the team was going to do. We're seeing it. Solid in defense, quick transitions, press and counter press. So I really like what I have seen so far.
Me too. And Matt, you're going to kind of get us started with the starting lineup here. You wrote them down for me to read off, but I think it's better if you tell us all about this change to a 4-4-2 rather than a 4-2-3-1, right?
Yeah, whether you want to view it as a 4-2-2-2 or a 4-4-2, I think the takeaways were we made 2 changes in this match from the Austin Charlotte that is last week. So we subbed in Jabulu Blom started the match, whereas Indy Vasilev had started the previous match, and we brought in Nico Gioacchini to start up top in place of Rasmus Alm. So it was more of a vertical attack, and I thought that worked really well against a team like Charlotte, who was really weak out on the wings. They were not able to do much in their first match, and it really kind of kept the pace going against us. And so what we were able to do pretty consistently is create that verticality and let our wingers, Jared Stroud and Tomas Ostrak, do their thing in those 1v1s on the outside. As we saw throughout the match, this also gave some incredible creativity in our final attacking third, with Klaus and Gioacchini playing pretty well off of each other. Nico Gioacchini in particular, I thought was incredible in his just drive and his commitment to attack the ball. There were multiple times in that game where he had 1v1s against the keeper, putting pressure on the keeper, almost causing turnovers, which we're going to circle back to and how that has been vitally important to the St. Louis offense.
Mm-hmm.
But this lineup in particular was still, like in Austin, extremely strong on the back end. So our back line, our midfielders really controlled the pace of play often throughout the game. And so that consistency that you see between Hebert, Parker, Nelson, Nerwinski, Leuven, and Blom kind of shown through from Austin to Charlotte. That provided the exact same thing we saw for 70, 75 minutes against Austin, and really set the tone for this entire game.
Yeah, it definitely had a different look with Gioacchini up top. And, I got word in the press conference today that perhaps he hasn't started the first game mainly because he's been slightly injured. And that could go either way in the way that it was said. But that's one thing that perhaps is the case, to see how much he plays in the future. Santiago, any thoughts on the formation and how they played? We got a goal to talk about if you want to talk about the first Charlotte goal.
Yeah, so Nico Gioacchini looked really good, and yeah, this week he was out of practice. He was out yesterday. He was out on Tuesday also, but he trained today, and Coach Carnell said he had a good training session, and that now he has to think on whether he's gonna play with two strikers or with just one. So we'll see if he's in the starting lineup again. But talking about the first goal, obviously it was an own goal, so that starts the conversation about St. Louis getting gifts. But again, it's the result of what the team is doing, and Nerwinski with that cross looking for Klaus, and Klaus was close to getting it, and obviously that caused the Charlotte center back to basically, he headed it, but he headed backwards, and
Tried to head it over the
Cisniegas was,
net.
yeah, and Cisniega was out of goal, and that was the first goal for St. Louis City SC at the stadium. I was talking to somebody like, first goal ever, opposing team, and then first City goal, an own goal. But it is what it is, and those still count. So and it came at the right moment. The team was having a hard time after the first goal and couldn't find the ball for some time, and that goal basically changed everything in this game. So that was good timing for that goal.
It was.
And one of the
Go
things
ahead.
that I thought was really interesting with those first two goals that you saw for a lot of the game, and it's kind of our style of play, are the role of our fullbacks. So with the first Charlotte goal being kind of that standard setter for the game, where Capetti, after a lot of yapping before and after that goal, including a run-in with Berkey, he was able to kind of score that first City Park goal. And the way he did it was more or less a transition goal. So we never fully got set. And if you've heard us talk about our Austin match, some preseason matches, it's pretty clear that when St. Louis City is able to set and get set in almost a back four, and whether it's a front four and letting our midfielders roam around, if we can get set, we're pretty good on defending, and it's been very consistent. When we're not able to get set and we're working in transition and teams are able to make some running moves inside and out, that's when we've been vulnerable. And Capetti kind of highlighted that, where it was a John Nelson turnover in our attacking third. Charlotte was able to counter very quickly, and their two DPs, Karol Swiderski and Enzo Capetti, were the ones who started and finished the attack. And the way that Capetti got through is our defense shifted to the left side of the field, where instead of our two center backs being in the box, you had Tim Parker, our right center back, and Jake Nerwinski, our right back, in the box right in front of Berkey. And Capetti, you could kind of see Jake Nerwinski see Capetti, circle around him. He had eyes on him, and then he lost him. And Capetti was able to go around behind Nerwinski and come up between the two defenders, almost to where Parker didn't have a chance. He had never seen him. He almost was leaving him to Nerwinski. And Nerwinski just lost him for a moment. Kopetti remained onside for the cross, and that's how he was able to find space in between the two.
A really important thing to point out is, especially when you look at the goal, I was trying to figure out whose fault was that. And you saw Parker turn around to Jake and be like, Jake, where were you? And then Jake points to the left or to his right. And that's because the left back was overlapping over, and he had to cover him on the back post. How many times do you see a fullback not paying attention to the back post and getting an easy goal to the other side? And in this case, Jake was being a responsible fullback, and Kopetti, Matt, you described it perfectly, but I think like the other side to this is that is such a veteran move to jump between those defenders and then sneak back central behind the center back so that he doesn't know you were there. That is a DP move, and it was a DP finish, and it was a really good cross in on top of that. But, you know, they unlocked us, and we weren't quite set, like you said, Matt. It wasn't an insanely fast counterattack. We had men back, but again, like you said, we weren't set. We had a veteran move behind us. Just really well done by Charlotte. A lot of teams will be caught in that way. It wasn't like St. Louis did a bad job there, I don't think.
No, and on the flip side, though, our other goals were more or less facilitated by our fullbacks. That attacking presence that they provide is the antithesis to that transition defensive weakness, you could kind of say. I hesitate to say I don't want to draw too much attention to it, only because we haven't been burned by it too many times. The few goals we've allowed, the 2 of the 3 goals we've allowed have been in those transition defense moments. And so our fullbacks, where, yes, there are opportunities to improve, but just like that first own goal that Charlotte scored for us, it was on a cross by Jake Nerwinski. And to that point, our press, our keeping the opponent uncomfortable, the way that played out, I think, was said perfectly by, I think it was Carnell this week, in Nico Gioacchini. By being so aggressive when that ball went out of play, he's not the guy who throws in the ball for us, but he was in that sense because he could tell that the defense for Charlotte wasn't set. He got the ball in as quick as possible to Nerwinski. Nerwinski crossed it into a very dangerous position. That was a quality cross by Nerwinski.
With his weak foot.
And it made good things happen, which is another hallmark of our team in those first 2 games, is peppering the defense, peppering that attacking third, being so unpredictable and creative. Our staff allowing our team to be so creative in that final third are creating significant problems for the defenses.
Indeed they are. And, you know, to continue on the goals, we got to jump through these next 2 goals because we want to talk about how we got these goals and what we think about the team in that regard. But the second St. Louis goal happened in stoppage time. And so this is yet another goal that was scored not through the run of play by St. Louis. So at this point, we still haven't scored a goal with our own feet. But in this case, it was a Swiderski handball just inside the box. Good call. It had to be called. Even looking back, it was the right call. Yeah. And so Leuven scores this goal on a penalty. Boy, he skied it into the top. Anyone else worried that it might go over? I got worried in the moment.
For a moment, I thought it was gonna go over. I was like, "Oh no!" And then, but yeah, great.
It was buried in that left corner.
Yeah,
he said it was the best one he's ever scored.
Yeah, it was a great penalty kick.
It was indeed. Let's talk about the third goal, Matt. You want to talk about this one? St. Louis goal. Sorry.
So the third St. Louis goal, I think, started again with Nico Gioacchini, forcing a turnover in our defensive side. He was able to gather the ball, play it up very quickly. You see 2 passes kind of strung really quickly. One from Gioacchini to Leuven. Leuven kind of tried to play it, couldn't really get it over. Ended up turning it over. Klaus keeping the pressure on Charlotte. And so you're seeing a lot of attempted quick movements. You're seeing a turnover there. And when Klaus tried to play the ball, he remained in the same position, essentially, that Jared Stroud was against Austin. By being that high up the field and by our team quickly moving the ball up the field after forcing a turnover, that allowed Tomas Ostrak to put some pressure on their defender, Malanda. And reminiscent of John Nelson doing the exact same thing against the Austin defense and Kip Keller, Malanda was trying to make a back pass. This was a little more of a acceptable back pass to me because Klaus was not directly between the defender and the keeper. So if you're picturing a defensive player on their right side making a back pass to the keeper, Klaus was more in the center of the field. And as he fully extended his foot to capture that, he was right place, right time. But as we're going to talk about in a second, my firm belief is that was no luck had to do with that. That was a
No.
complete byproduct of the system and the high press and the pressure that we've been performing. But he was able to not only get the leg out, he was able to flick it, not unlike we saw against us with Sebastian Driussi against Austin, flick it over the keeper for that third goal.
Indeed, and let's just jump right into that debate, because everyone around the league is talking about, if you're not a St. Louis fan, then the question is, are you guys ever going to score any goals that aren't gifted to you in one way or another? You know what I mean? I think we have one goal through the run of play, and depending on how you want to picture them, but in the 2 games, I mean. And so, are we getting lucky? Are we being handed goals? Is the ref handing us a goal? Or is this a product of our pressing, of our system? Is it a little in between? Santiago, you got to start us with this one.
Yeah, it's definitely a product of the system of what the team is doing to have quick transitions, to also press when the other teams get the ball back. Don't let them settle when they're trying to start playing from the back. So I think the end result is, yes, a bad pass or a penalty kick, but St. Louis is doing the dirty job to create all these chances. And talking about the second goal, yeah, you're saying it wasn't the run of play, it was a penalty kick, but the play that created that penalty kick, it started all the way in the back with Roman Berkey and Joaquini, Stroud, Nelson were involved, and that was a quick transition. So you have to give credit to the team for creating those opportunities. So I still don't buy this gifted goals thing.
Yeah.
It's an easy narrative, right? Though, like, we understand where it's coming from. It's an easy narrative for a non-St. Louisan to see a team come in the league, and all of a sudden, who in their right mind would expect 2 back passes to be stolen and turned into 2 goals 2 matches in? That coupled with an own goal, which speaks just to Santi's point that knowing and having watched each match from not just a St. Louis perspective, but an analytical perspective, you're able to see some of the numbers support some of the arguments. So my favorite stat of the week is that St. Louis City, after 2 matches, are tied in the league lead in high turnovers forced in that final third with 25 over 2 games. We're tied with Seattle. Tells me 2 things. Tells me that the press works, and the way that we're moving the ball up the field and keeping that pressure on the defenders is making them uncomfortable. Is it going to last and be sustained the entire season? Are teams going to start to try to figure it out? They're probably going to try to figure it out, maybe make some quicker passes and feel like St. Louis could be on them at any moment. But the other thing it says is that it's not just the high press. It's the teamwork in knowing where you're trying to force a defender or force an attacking player at that point. So you get opportunities like Nelson in the Austin match, where he's pushing Kip Keller towards Jared Stroud. He's not trying to just press for pressing's sake. He's moving the player into a certain position. Tomas Ostrak did the exact same thing, where he was trying to move Malanda towards Klaus and towards that dangerous spot where he didn't have any opportunities to play a good ball. So all of those things together, the system itself, the players knowing what to do as opposed to just blindly putting pressure on the ball, driving the opponent certain places, that tells me that if we're not going to continue to get goals out of this, we're at least going to continue to force some of these turnovers in that final third.
And as host, I'm going to give some devil's advocacy here before we move on.
Which he always does. And I love it.
It's healthy for all of us, right? But and then we're going to move on without any replies because we got to get moving here. But, does this sort of thing happen at the end of the season? Is this a early season jitters situation? And does it happen from veteran center backs? I think Kip Keller's 22, 23. The center back that got picked off today, this last Saturday, was a 21-year-old French center back who is getting accolades after accolade after accolade, is linked to moves to Europe. But he's 21, right? And he's playing in a very athletic, some would say tough environment. And so is that just a young kid early in the season. Is this going to disappear as the season goes on? As our legs get tired, is going to be a theme throughout the season, I think, too. So that's just the devil's advocacy that we have to think about. But, I'm still biased, guys. That handball was forced 110% is due to St. Louis City doing good work. And then the rest, at least 50-50, if not 70-30 or better, guys. I mean, come on. We got to give our guys some credit here. And we're going to see more and more of that throughout the season. And we're going to see even a little bit more discussion about that in the game between LAFC and Portland. But before we do that, there's a little bit of news that we can catch up with, a little stuff to inform any average soccer viewers, and even some nerdy facts that we're about to get from Matt about some of these average moves that you might see from any given sports team on any given day. The biggest one that we're going to talk about first is Lucas Bartlett was a trialist in preseason and has been labeled a trialist up until yesterday when he was announced as a signing to replace Nilsson, who was officially placed on the injury list. Matt, you released a video today that was really helpful in helping us understand some of the crazy MLS roster rules. Do you want to talk a little bit about that now?
Yeah, it's not too unlike baseball rules, which a lot of us are familiar with from the Cardinals, where if a player is placed on the IL in baseball, you're allowed a replacement player, and they have a 15-day IL, a 30-day, those kinds of things. Well, in MLS, the injured list is you have to miss at least 6 games. We know Rasmus Alm is going to be out. I'm sorry, we know Joachim Nilsson. Got my Swedish players mixed up. Joachim Nilsson is going to be out until at least the summer. So reevaluated late May, likely out until June or July. So that easy 6 games right there. So what that does is that gives us an extra roster slot to play with. St. Louis City already had 2 roster slots available. And so we promoted essentially Lucas Bartlett to the squad, signed him to a 1-year deal with 2 option years. So at this point, he could be that injury replacement on Nilsson's roster slot. He could also be occupying another roster slot. It really doesn't matter until Nilsson comes back, because it's going to impact our ability to sign players in the summer transfer window. That's really the takeaway from that. And I think that Bartlett just provides center back depth, because at this point we have 5 healthy center backs on our roster, and we've I think on any given game day rostered 4 of them to the game day roster. John Bell has been recovering from his sports hernia surgery, and so Bartlett is expected to see, unless there's another injury, I would expect to see him a lot with City too, but also provide that for sure depth on the team now in case anything else happens to our center backs.
And if you don't know, I was talking to my friend. He didn't even realize that was a center back when he saw the announcement. So this is a center back, a central defender. This boy is tall. This is
really tall.
A very tall man, and which is in contrast to a lot of our other center backs. Some are 6 foot or so, but this guy's pretty big, and he scored a goal in preseason, so that couldn't have hurt things, right? And a lot of those tall guys are there for scoring goals as well as defending. So, and then the last thing is, I think the only worry we get is we're only allowed a certain amount of money. We're only allowed a certain amount of roster slots. Santiago, does this, and Matt, does this affect us being able to pick someone up in the summer? And Matt, I know you had an idea of why that may not be a problem.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem, but I wanna let Matt talk about it because he released that video. But yeah, it would create a lot. There is still a lot of flexibility. So Matt, why don't you talk about it?
Yeah, so aside from the 2 roster slots that we have available, with Nilsson out especially, not expecting Bartlett to be on anything more than probably a senior minimum contract. He's 25 years old. He was signed with FC Dallas, played a lot in Next Pro with North Texas. So he's not, to me as a player on the team, he's a role-based player. He's going to provide depth. He's not costing us a lot in his salary. He's not taking up an international slot. He's not taking up any of our U22 slots, young DPs. That is still all on the table. All of that remains. It's a defensive body who knows the system, been in the camp the entirety. So it's nothing but an upside signing to me that provides some insurance for our team.
And I'm so sorry if I missed it, but he can be loaned back to City too, right? Did you cover that?
Yeah, so the other rule is that there is 1 season-long loan that every team has to their affiliates, and we obviously haven't used ours officially yet. So options will exist. A lot of our City players who don't play for City during a match day may find time on a Sunday with our City 2 team, but those aren't official loans. They're not season-long loans. It's like an Aziel Jackson. If he doesn't make the game day roster on Saturday, you're likely to see him for City 2 to get minutes in and to get some running out. But a guy like Bartlett, if Nilsson comes back, I could easily see him being loaned for the rest of the season officially to City 2, meaning he won't have an opportunity to come back. He'll be on official loan, keeping those roster slots all neat and tidy.
Yeah, and when he was on trial during preseason, and I think we talked about it uh, on a previous podcast or maybe on our chat, we thought that yeah, he's with the team in preseason, but most likely he will sign with CD2.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, now the team will have to decide when Nilsson is back if that's what they are going to do. But back to the comment what Matt made about some players playing with CD2. Coach Carnell talked a little bit about that this week. He was
Mm-hmm.
saying, yeah, we have a lot of competition going on, and not everybody's gonna be in the 20 man roster for game day. So the guys that don't play, they're gonna see minutes with CD2 on Sunday. So they continue getting like match play minutes. So yeah, we're gonna see a lot of that during the season with CD2.
And very quickly, Santiago, you just gave us a little news that those games will be on a Sunday, most likely. And I don't know if you can say or not. Do you know where these games are going to be played?
I don't for sure. But yeah, I have heard rumors that there will be games possibly at the stadium. At least from what I heard from the sales standpoint. But obviously, the schedule is not announced. Whether it's gonna be Sunday every week hasn't been confirmed either. But yeah, there may be some at the stadium, but obviously none of that has been announced.
And obviously every market is different, but that is precedent was set last year for some of these next pro teams to play in their MLS stadiums. The Earthquakes 2 team played at PayPal Park out in San Jose. Sporting 2 played at Children's Mercy Park a couple times. Columbus Crew 2 played at Lower.com Field quite a bit. They had some double headers even when they had some games on Saturday. So this isn't out of the ordinary. It may be out of the ordinary to see every single game, but as you're listening to this and thinking about what City 2 is, how closely you're going to pay attention to, that's another opportunity to get in the stadium to see a game.
It is.
Yeah, if any of these games end up at the stadium,
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for people who didn't have a chance to get tickets for CDSC, and it's gonna be cheaper too. So yeah, it's a win-win for everybody.
And seeing the kids of the future, this is akin to, I mean, not a direct akin thing, but to see the kids of the future, right? They're the ones that are going to be playing over there regularly, and so you can say you saw them back then,
like we did with Miguel Perez and Caden Glover last year.
Well said, sir. Well said. If you're joining us, since we've been talking for a little bit here, this is Flyover Footy. We're a St. Louis soccer podcast, and we're broadcasting on the big 550 KTRS. Welcome, and we're bringing everybody up to date on what they might have seen in Charlotte, and we're about to kind of talk about some stats, about a little bit of news about the players that we've had, and then we're going to end today previewing the match in Portland, which is, if you're listening actually on the radio, is about to happen. So this is very timely. Thank you to KTRS for putting us in this time slot. This is a lot of fun. Matt, we've got a lot of stats. We probably got to cut it a little short. So you want to pick and choose some of the news and stats that you'd like to share with everybody before we talk about the Portland game?
Oh yeah, let's do a lightning round of what you need to know from some of the players and how they've been stacking up against the league in these first 2 matches. So some of the big news for a couple of our players, Klaus, Leuven, and Parker, all are tops of the league in certain categories. Klaus is one of 5 players so far with goals in both games. Edward Leuven is in the top 5 in expected goals and expected goals plus expected assists, basically meaning that the shots he takes on the field have a high probability of going in. He's putting himself in good positions. He's making great passes to put the ball in good positions. So he's top 5 in that. Tim Parker is tied with the league lead in interceptions. Jabulu Balom also one behind the league lead in interceptions. Edward Leuven also tied with the league lead in tackles with 7. So these are very key defensive metrics showing just how much pressure and how much success we're having to disrupt the offense on the other side. City is also tied for most goals and has the 3rd highest overall team XG through 2 matches. So these aren't lucky goals that we're getting to go in by the stats. couple other things are interesting to note is through 2 games, we have Jake Nerwinski, Tim Parker, Kyle Hebert, John Nelson, Edward Leuven, and Jabulu Blom have all played 90 minutes against Charlotte. So that is our entire back line. Our midfield has played the full 90. Through 2 games, that entire back line and Edu Leuven have played all 180 plus minutes. Jabulu Blom came in as that sub against Austin. We're talking a lot of minutes, a lot of familiarity with this back line, and a lot of success going into Portland.
Yeah, this is something I asked about today, and hopefully we can post videos. But, managing legs is going to be massive. And looking at how much, I asked John Nelson, I was like, man, you run the entire match. You cover a lot of ground. You and Jake both. Like, are you guys going to have to pay attention to? And depth was something he mentioned in addition to him taking care of his body. So, Santiago, any thoughts on any of the news, any of the stats, anything you've seen from the first 2 games that might come in handy to know about for Portland?
So I actually wanted to talk a little bit about Portland. They have some key players that they're going to be missing. So Jimmy Chara has a hamstring injury, and he's not going to play against St. Louis. Last year, he has scored, I think it was like 4 or 5 goals, but he also had a lot of assists. He had 9 assists.
Oh, yeah.
So he's a big piece for the system that Portland has. Also missing Sebastian Blanco. He has a knee injury, and he's going to be out for a few games. Also, he had 8 assists last year and 7 goals. So a couple of big pieces on offense that will be missing, and also Dairon Asprilla, who was their goal scoring leader last year, leading goal scorer last year. So missing a few pieces, but it was interesting today that Nell, referring to Portland, said that they like transitioning too, the way St. Louis does. So it's going to be, he called it the battle of transition, and whoever wins that battle is going to be the team that's going to come on top and win the game or get the result.
Yeah, Portland's played kind of vastly different games in their first 2 matches against Sporting Kansas City and LAFC. They obviously beat Sporting Kansas City 1-0 to start the year in a weather-delayed game. They had to move that game due to weather. And then they ended up losing to LAFC, where there was a lot of pomp and circumstance with that LAFC game because it was their cup ring ceremony. They had all that spectacle with Will Ferrell going on. But it was back and forth as far as their possession. Portland comes into this match with a less than 50% average on possession, just like we do. They have an average of 48. We have an average of 40. But some of these other stats, Santi, they really align with how we like to force our opponents into. So they're averaging less than 10 shots per game, only 5 shots on goal per game. They're averaging around 417 total passes, which isn't too far off from us, but that speaks to that transition work. A lot of quick ball movements up the field. They're not going to possess the ball a lot and make back passes and make side passes horizontal. They're going to try to move the ball, not unlike we are. So that is, I think, spot on to what the stats support as well.
Yeah, and I think we haven't quite played up exactly how big a battle this is going to be, how different a team this is going to be than the first 2 teams we played. Charlotte and Austin both possess the ball a decent amount. That plays to our advantage, in our opinion. When we look at what City 2 was able to do, that's what we want. We want somebody who wants the ball, because then we can take it from them, right, in their own half. It's something that we've been very good at in both this season and last. But this team is one, I don't know what to expect as far as how the game will go. But what Portland wants to do is going to be extremely, they're going to sit back. They're going to look to take the ball. And yes, they're going to look to transition, but they're looking to transition in their half, in the back half. We're looking to transition into their own half as well. So I'm interested to see whether the high press or the low block is going to win the day in this regard. And yes, we're away. Yes, a lot of guys have played 90 minutes, and so I'm interested to see all those things, how they play out, how our subs play out, and how we do against a defensive team, which is probably going to happen more often than a possessing team, in my opinion. So this is going to be a really fun one to see. It's a total change of tactics here.
Not just tactics, but the circumstances surrounding the match too. The first match was City taking the field for the first time. It was the Butterflies, and it was a loud stadium. The second match, obviously, they opened City Park. There have been a lot of big moments these first two games. I don't want to say the newness is wearing off now, but the big moments are more or less over. Like we're starting to get into the thick of things now. This is enemy territory with a very strong, very loud fan base. Timbers Army are one of the most renowned fan bases in all of MLS for very good reason. They have a lot of drive, a lot of voice and sound that they project, and it really is going to be hostile territory. And I'm interested to see how City adapts to that different mindset of, we don't have a moment to play for now. We're comfortable in the league. Now we're almost needing to live up to what these shifting expectations are, because you're starting to see rising in the power rankings. You're starting to see narratives flip about suddenly we're one of four expansion teams to ever start 2-0. If we win this game against Portland, we're one of two expansion teams to start 3-0 with the 09 Sounders. So there's that kind of expectation starting to build. But as far as the Timbers go, to me, Phil, I kind of see us as getting the Timbers at the right moment. This Timbers team, and to Santi's point, their injury list, they've got 4 players out with right knee injuries, or 4 players out with knee injuries, and one with a hamstring in Yimichara. So they're kind of a little down here as far as their firepower goes. The 2 players, to me, that you really need to watch out for are Evander, who is their club record signing, $10 million transfer fee from... Where did he come from? He came from a Danish side. Michelin, Danish side, Michelin, but he's a Brazilian midfielder. They're number 10. He wears number 20 on the field. Watch out for him. He has a goal with 4 shots through 2 matches. And the interesting stat about Evander to me is that he's taken on a defender 1v1 14 times over 2 matches with 9 successful dribbles this year, tied for the league lead. He's the guy who is going to be really put to a test with Edward Leuven and Jabulu Blom. Those battles in the midfield, to me, are going to really tell the tale of this tape.
Yeah, I mean, Santiago, how important in a low block like we talked about with a defensive side who wants to get you on transition. To me, this is a Jabulu Blom game. Like, this is going to revolve around him having to work very hard and be very, very good and make no mistakes, right?
Yeah, and we have already seen what he is able to do, and he's one of those guys that, like, maybe you don't see him a lot, like making like great plays, but he's like everywhere, and he's like recovering balls, doing things that maybe when you look at the highlights you don't see him anywhere, but at the same time he's everywhere and helping a lot in defense. So yeah, I think he will be key for this game, and it was good that he played 90 minutes last week, and I know there were some concerns first game. Obviously he didn't start because he wasn't ready for 90 minutes, but obviously he had to go quickly into the game and played 70 plus minutes. So I think he's now ready, and it'll be great to see to continue seeing his progression and seeing what he can do for the team. But so far, I think he is what the South African fans said about him, and obviously his nickname Stopper, the Cleaner, and we're seeing that. Yep. He's doing great things with CDSC.
He's the guy who, when we're in transition moments and we're needing to defend in transition, is finding himself in the right positions to block those gaps between our center backs and our fullbacks and our center backs, to allow that movement on the left and the right sides of the field. So we talked earlier about the Nowinski-Parker kind of almost miscommunication for the Capetti goal. Well, Blom is the guy who is blocking those and plugging those gaps. And we're going to need it because, like Phil said, transition is how Portland and Evander in particular are going to be playing us. So you're going to see a lot of Blom. I wouldn't be surprised, too, if you saw Leuven play a little bit further back and try to help out on that regard as well. We've seen him play that 6, 8, and 10, meaning the back defensive mid all the way up to the attacking. But at times, I think it was you, Santi, who told me that he was kind of not talked to, but he had a discussion with Carnell about moving too far up the field and making sure to not get too excited, to attack minded, and keeping in your position. So he's kind of worked through that as well. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if the formation we ran out kind of allows him to play make from the middle of the field with another 4, possibly 3 attacking midfielders and 4 attackers.
Yeah, and I asked Carnell today about what I kind of flubbed the question because I kind of quoted something incorrectly, and Carnell did not like it. So that's my first.
But you came back, and I think it was okay. But
I was
yeah,
very
go ahead.
embarrassed, but I did get it wrong. I'm pretty sure. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I was just mostly asking home and away. Does that make a difference? I did notice. I forgot to ask Carnell about this, but after the first goal, Carnell asked John Nelson to come over, and then he sent him to give a message to Leuven. And so this is something I've been watching, Matt. You really nailed it. We all thought that before Blom came, that Leuven was going to be our 6, just going to be the 6, the defensive-minded guy. And we've just seen him taking the 10 jersey, and then we've seen him play 2 games. And I'm sorry, that's just not what he is, right? He can be, but that's not what he is. He's more than that. And so I'm really interested to see, we're away to a really tough team. Is Leuven going to have more responsibilities in defense? Or is, our fullbacks going to sit back more? There's a lot to look for here. And there's a lot we can ask Carnell about after this game's over. But I do want to remind everybody, we'll take a little second here to remind you that this is Flyover Footy. We're a St. Louis soccer podcast, and we are broadcasting on the Big 550 KTRS. Thank you so much for joining us. We got a little bit more on Portland here, maybe another 5 minutes on Portland and what you might see with St. Louis City playing them in Portland. And the last thing I want to kind of transition to is I watched this LAFC game. The SKC game wasn't too informative in my opinion, but the LAFC game showed us that LAFC was able to score on a high press transition, which very much made me very happy to see. They were able to score on a set piece from the corner, which we've seen Leuven's talent on set pieces. I'm forgetting what the third goal was like. I think it was a bit of a scramble in the box, but either way, what I saw
was
from
a PK,
Portland,
I think.
Oh, it was a PK. You're right.
PK.
And we've seen that from St. Louis as well. But it all looked like stuff that St. Louis is capable of. However, I am comparing them to LAFC, who won the league last year. So are they or are they not? Let's just kind of talk about what we've seen from them versus what Portland has done versus LAFC.
Yeah, I don't. You go, Santi.
Yeah, no. So very quick. So that penalty was after a set piece. So yeah, 1 goal from a set piece, and then that penalty came after a set piece. So I think that's something. I think St. Louis is gonna. They probably look at it and is gonna find some weaknesses in those set pieces. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a goal or some very good chances out of set pieces.
Yeah, and the anecdote there is a lot of people were wondering, this is going to be our first turf field we've gone to. How's the team kind of managed that? And it looks like throughout this week, we've been practicing on grass, but we did notice that Leuven and Vasilev, our 2 set piece takers, did find themselves time to go over to the turf practice field just to get a sense for how the ball is gonna land, how they need to get under it at a different angle, because they're working on that. So when you talk about how's the turf going to be, in addition to how the timbers are going to be, our team, I think, is properly preparing for that, knowing that the Timbers could be vulnerable to some set pieces. We have some really high-quality set-piece takers, as we've seen, whether it's Leuven or whether it's Vasilev. Vasilev scored goals on set pieces in preseason. Leuven obviously has the first goal from a corner that we had this year. And knowing that we have that turf field at our disposal to allow them to practice on, it gives you a lot of confidence that they're preparing for the right scenarios going into this match.
It is. And, Matt, you touched on it a little bit. Let's open up to anything you guys want to talk about. But, one thing that comes to mind is that Portland, yes, we are coming off this hype of winning at home, winning away in our very first game. But Portland is kind of known as the central supporters club, right? Like the chainsaw and the cutting of the tree. And, they just expanded. They're going to have 30, I think they have a 30,000 person capacity or close to it.
Yeah, Providence Park was added to with that additional tier a couple years ago.
Yeah, so I mean, the game day environment there is very good. So yes, we can be so proud, but our guys are about to go into a very similar environment over there, and so it's an environment that we as St. Louisans could admire. As far as yes, they're doing it right over there, but it's not exactly what we want to see our guys go into on the third game of the season in their very first season.
Yeah, one thing that I do want to say before I want to get some starting lineup guesses here, speculation. But one thing I do want to say is the Timbers have a reputation in MLS, and it's a good reputation of success. And so one thing that I've noticed is over the past couple of years, last year and so far into this year, this isn't that Portland Timbers team necessarily. There's not a whole lot that they did right last year. They only had 11 wins in 34 matches. It was the first time they've missed the playoffs since 2016. First time ever for their head coach, Giovanni Savarese. And this team that they have this year is largely the same from last year. They had 2 departures, and the only notable addition to last year's team was Evander. So when we have that going, I think that personally, I want to see a 4-2-3-1 attack this. I think Joachini will probably come off the bench, but I would love to see Vasilev in that attacking midfield position. I would love to see Ostrak and Alm. I think Jared Stroud gets the bench on this one to come off as a sub in the second half. But other than that, I want to see Pedro at some point, but I think we're riding a good thing with this back line in our midfield.
What do you think, Santi?
I agree. Basilev is gonna crack the starting lineup, but I have Alm on the bench instead of Stroud.
So Ostrak on the right, Stroud on the left.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Very interesting.
How long does the mask stay on? Because his mask that covered his broken nose only lasted about 5 minutes against Charlotte.
True.
Yeah.
I don't think it makes it to the field this time. I think he's done. I would go, we're all going to have a different opinion here, which I really love. I think Stroud plays because he's played in Portland before, and he's like a chippy fella, and that's something you want when you're away. And I think Alm will play because I do think he's a very athletic. He's just an away type player. So I think Alm will start, even though, I don't know. Do we leave Ostrak off?
You're going with that lineup to start with against Austin, with Blom instead of Vasilev, and having Stroud, Ostrak, and Alm with Klaus up front?
I think so. I think I would. Just only because it's an away game. But I don't know if I'm overplaying the away thing. That's kind of what I wanted from Carnell, like we talked about. I kind of messed up the question, so I didn't get it answered. But the only thing I do want to say is I think I'd like to see a fullback subbed out. And if that means like we're behind and we need to catch up, I want to see Pedro. If that means we're ahead, let's rest Jake and get Watts in there or whoever else that we want to put in at right back to get to defend out a game with getting some rested legs.
I like it.
Those are my final thoughts. I think we need to get going, guys. So this is Matt Baker, Santiago Beltran. I'm Phil Grooms. Thank you so much for listening. Again, we're Flyover Footy. We're a St. Louis soccer podcast. You're listening to us on the big 550 KTRS. Enjoy the game, everybody. In 30 minutes, St. Louis kicks off for their first game against Portland Timbers. Hope you guys enjoy, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Go City.